These are the 10 best-selling eyeshadows for 10 different brands, so one per brand. I did reach out to all of the brands except for Oden's Eye to ask which single eyeshadow was their best selling. Doesn't matter if it was multi-chrome and dual-chrome, so it's a mixture of everything, and it is really interesting to see them together in the pan. I feel like there's a really nice variety, but also a little bit of similarity. Also, I couldn't find my Myrrh, so I'm using the original version of Myrrh called Will-O-the-Wisp, which was part of the 12 Days of Christmas advent calendar from last year from Clionadh, and I was sent all the shades in PR with the exception of the shade from ShineBySD. So let's get right into it. And these are in no particular order. This is Transmutation from Dieverune Cosmetics. I am not surprised at all by this one. It is such a beautiful, very interesting shade. This one did actually just launch the most recently to the brand. And this one's a little bit flaky in the pan, but it does completely smooth out. And it's just such an interesting, vibrant cobalt blue with like a little bit of a grungier base. It's got almost like a grayish base to it. A real fun one to just layer over mattes. I'm gonna add a second layer. It's one of those like ultraviolet type of blue purples. Next shade is Boreas, and it's from Fantasy Cosmetica, and I believe this one is a Holo. And for Fantasy Cosmetica, I really had no idea what could be the best selling shade, and the shade is very smooth, and here you can see the Holo a little bit more. And so it's basically a lighter green with a brownish beige base to it, and the Holo sparkles throughout. Next up is a Love Bite from Bella Beaute Bar, a beautiful darker red multi-chrome shade. I did compare this one to Leon, and it is not as of a true vibrant red as that shade, but it is a red multi-chrome, and it has quite a bit of a shift. And it is very smooth and very, very opaque. And so it shifts to orange to gold, to maybe a little bit of a green on a harsh angle. See it actually more on this side of the shift. This was definitely one of my guesses for what the top shade was. I kind of thought it would be fun for me to guess a little bit before they gave me an answer, and I definitely was considering this one. Next up is Terra Moons, and their best-selling shade is Vampire Star. I actually had different guesses written down, like Ikea, and I forget what the other one was. I think one of their red shades. They did launch a bunch of reddish multi-chromes, but this one, it really makes a lot of sense. It's very, very shifty and quite unique in the way that it looks straight on and then the shift in it. This one has a little bit of a larger particle size, but nothing overly flaky or textured, and it does completely smooth out. And it is just so magical. Quite opaque, so it's kind of like a yellow, light yellow straight on with a purple base shifting to blue to teal aqua all the way to green. It is such an interesting shade, very, very shifty, and it does have quite a bit of sparkle to it. Next shade is Stunner from ShineBySD, and this was my guess. I love the shade so much. It is truly, as the name says, a stunner. It has so many different flecks throughout it. It's a very topper-like shadow. It is part of their Sparkle Lights collection, and I actually just, during their Black Friday sale, bought the other 4 shades. And all of these have just a little bit of a texture to them, just a tiny bit. So it does have the sheerness to it. At the same time, you could kind of get it a little bit more opaque, but I don't think it's meant to really be opaque. It has a little bit of a brown base, just a little bit, and a bunch of different colorful flecks throughout. I see teal and red, and it is such a stunner on the eye. A very beautiful shade. I really love this collection from ShineBySD that they launched this year. Next up is Bubblegum Holo from Touch of Glam Beauty. Now, I think their best-selling shade is actually the Barbie Holo, but I don't have that one. So we're going to talk about Bubblegum Holo. It is their second bestseller, and I definitely see why. It's a beautiful pink holo, a very ever so slightly larger particle size, but look at that holo. It is so apparent, which is why I love Touch of Glam Beauty's holos. They have some of the best holos in my opinion. It's a little bit more of a baby pink, but it does have quite a bit of brightness to it, and it's very saturated. And then the holo on the side, especially when it's out of focus. It does shift a little bit as well. For Oden's I went on their website and I searched by best selling, and this one was actually the newest shade that launched this year that was in the top section of the sellers, and then right below it was Matthew, which Matthew was going to be my guess. So I was a little bit surprised by Wyatt, but it is a beautiful shadow. It's not a very opaque shade, and it is a squishy shade, unfortunately. So it does feel a little, I feel like it feels a little bit different now since I've obviously had it for a few months. So I added just a second layer. It's super, super shifty, really beautiful, kind of like a pastel multi-chrome essentially. It's got like a really beautiful blue straight on. I kind of see ever so slightly a base to it, but it's not like too apparent. And the shift to purple. Next up is Glaminatrix Cosmetics, and I knew it was going to be Skink, and it was Skink. I love the shadow so much. Ultra dimensional, very, very sparkly topper-like shadow. It's got a little bit of a slightly larger particle size, completely smoothed out. It just adds that extra sparkle to it because of that texture. And it's got a little bit of a brownish base to it, and this shade looks wet on the lid. It is such a stunner. It's got a little bit of duochrome shift to it, but it's definitely not labeled as a multi-chrome. And I love this one. It's so beautiful all over the lid, just as a one and done especially. So beautiful. When I first got this shade, I could not stop wearing it. For Ensley Rain, the best-selling shade is Mind Melt, and this one came out with the more recent Underland collection. And this is a true holographic eyeshadow. So this is not a multi-chrome or anything like that. It has that silvery, true holographic look, especially, and the rainbow sparkles are especially brought out with bright lighting, though you can see them without it a little bit, but it's not as prominent. This is a flakier shade, a little bit chunkier shade in the way that it especially picks up. It does smooth out though, and a little bit goes a long way. I mean, look at that. It just keeps going. I can kind of spread it around. So it's got that silver look to it with the holo, especially when it goes out of focus. You just want one true holo, then this one definitely would be a great option for that. And Clionadh's bestseller is Myrrh. So mine is in a circle pan because, as I mentioned, I cannot find my Myrrh. I have no idea where it is. I have looked in all my palettes, all the drawers. I cannot find it. So here is Will o' the Wisp, which is the original version of it in the round pan. But when you order Myrrh, it will be in the Stained Glass Collection rectangular pan. And this is a very smooth shade with a lime green base to it and a super vibrant bluish flash straight on. And the shade is very, very smooth. And how just smooth it is. So blue straight on and then really shifting there to, or ultraviolet. I feel like the base is looking a little bit yellow here, but it's definitely more of a lime green than yellow. And this one I guessed right. I mean, everyone was obsessed with the shade. Let me know in the comments below if any of these shocked you. And stay tuned, I will be doing my top 10 single eyeshadows of 2024, as well as top 10 eyeshadows inside of palette, and of course those will all be indie brands, so I'm very excited to film those videos. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time.